Hello and welcome to Behind the Scenes with me for Found a Major Project. So today is a date in half time, it's Tuesday, and right now I'm going to be going to a carers meeting to go talk to people who are carers for the elderly to see what kind of help they get, and to basically to do primary research. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to film whilst I'm there, which is why I'm kind of doing this segment here now, just in case I'm not, but I'm going to take this with me just in case I'm allowed to like interview one or two of the people, or yeah. But if there's footage after this, then I was able to film. If not, then I'll just tell you about what I did afterwards. So I've got to go now, but I will see you in a bit. So hello, I've just come back from my carers support meeting that I went to gather primary research on what kind of help carers get, so then I know kind of what aspects I can add into my film when the idea of carers is round, and basically things like that, and kind of get a better understanding on kind of what people do as a carer and things like that. So when I went, I wasn't able to film because it's kind of a bit personal and I didn't want to be too intrusive and things like that, so I decided just to sit and take notes. Overall, the kind of group meeting was quite friendly, very relaxed, and people were kind of just talking about like problems or stuff that's gone on in their week, kind of just a little release of talking basically, which was quite nice. So the organisation that runs the meeting is Action for Carers Oxfordshire. So they basically support unpaid carers within Oxfordshire, and kind of support them because obviously they're unpaid, so when they're caring for the people, like their loved ones, they don't get any money for it, and so sometimes that can be quite hard. So they try and support them as much as they can, and yeah, basically that is what I kind of got from that. The lady who runs the support group is called Fiona, and she's worked there for about 6 or 7 years, so from what I gathered, that was around the time where the group kind of began. So it's definitely become a bigger thing in the past like 10 years or so, if there wasn't a kind of group like this before, which was quite interesting to see. And Fiona was kind of saying how she supports and cares for her father, who's kind of visually and hearing impaired. So she's been with the group from the beginning, so she knows everybody who was at the group and people who have come and gone within the group, sadly. But it was really nice to see like the friendly atmosphere and how much this one lady helps a group of people just to talk and help them with their problems and things like that. Whilst I was at the group, it was interesting to see and hear that there isn't really a lot of facilities out there for unpaid carers, which is quite sad. So when I was talking to the group and when I asked them, they said that pretty much the only thing that they had was that group, as in terms of support and kind of help in a way, which if you think about it, it's kind of hard for them. So because if they didn't have the group, then they would have nothing, so it's good to see that that group is running and they have that. They did also mention that there is this thing called Time Out, which is basically like a scheme where a carer can get a volunteer or a paid person to come and sit with their loved one who needs caring for whilst they go to the shops or go into town or something like that, just so that they can have a little break. from being a carer, especially if they're a full-time carer. That is definitely something they would need, because it can probably get a lot and quite stressful. And then support groups, and that is pretty much all that non-paid carers get in terms of help, which, if you think about it, isn't a lot. So from that, I now know what kind of things I can add in, maybe like the possibility of a timeout person coming in during my film, which I think might be show that carers don't really get a lot. And whilst I was there was the group was about 5 of us today, which isn't that many, which is quite surprising. But when I was there, I was kind of talking to them, and they were all talking about things that had gone on in their week and things like that. And within the group, there were people who were caring for their husbands, their parents, and it was kind of interesting to see everybody's personal story. And one of the ladies' husbands had unfortunately passed away from Alzheimer's, but she still goes because it's something to keep her mind busy, and it's nice to kind of talk to people. But one of the main things that most of the carers said was that even after their person that they've been looking after dies, they still have that instinct of being a carer inside them. So it's kind of nice to then meet up with other people who've still got that instinct within them, and something relatable, and they've kind of got that connection of both all being carers. Another thing was that one of the gentlemen, when he first met the organiser, Fiona, she went to his house, and when she arrived, he thought that Fiona was there to see his dad, who he cares for, but actually Fiona was there to see him, and he was quite surprised at the fact that she had come to see him, because he was like, well, my dad's the one that needs caring for, why worry about me when I'm fine? And so there's kind of like that whole idea of, why should anyone worry about me when I'm fine? Which a lot of people agreed with, that happens quite a lot when they're a carer, that they think that they don't need to worry about themselves or their well-being. They need to care mainly about the person who needs to be cared for. Similarly with that, they were saying how that not all, but majority of the time, GPs, when they go, say with their carer or something like that, GPs don't see the carer as someone who needs to be helped. So that's why a lot of the time carers don't get a lot of help or referrals or things like that is needed. And also the lady who brought her husband along, who suffers with dementia, was saying how useful the use of assisted technology and how useful technology is becoming for people with dementia. So this lady has a thing called Nest, which is an app that allows her to kind of see her husband's bedroom, because he doesn't sleep well, but she thinks he does. So by using this camera and app, she can actually see that, okay, her husband hasn't slept well that night because he's been up 2 or 3 times. And so it allows her to not spy, but to monitor and then plan things the following day according to how he's slept, which was quite, like, you wouldn't really think of it in that way, but actually the use and start of using technology for things like that can be really useful. Then also, what I found is that a lot of the people who were carers were saying that the people they were caring for tried to be as independent as possible for the longest time possible, and mobile and things like that, which was quite like an interesting thing to see, because it shows even though that they've got this like illness or disease, they still try to do as much for themselves as they can, but then it gets to a point where they can't do it anymore, and so it is when certain stages of dementia or Alzheimer's take over, and so then they start to lose their mobility, and I like how it decreases and things like that. And all, again, similarly, they were all saying how the lady who brought her husband along was saying how he's had it since dementia since 2009, so that's like 10 years, and she was saying how much it like goes up and down, like the symptoms go up and down, and then it kind of plateaus and things like that, and just to kind of see the variations. So I now know that I need to kind of do some research into like the progression of Alzheimer's and dementia to kind of see how through like the process, or the basically through however long the person has dementia, kind of what symptoms and things kind of come and go, so that I know what I can put into my short film to make it as realistic as possible. And when I mentioned that I was making a short film, they were quite like interested, because they were kind of talking about how it's not something that's kind of looked into a lot, even though it's becoming quite a big thing. So I was kind of glad that they liked my idea, and they were quite eager to like talk and answer my questions that I had. But I think that is about it for the primary research into carers. I've definitely found out a lot more information and the kind of things that carers get and don't get. But like I said, moving on, I now need to kind of look into more of like the signs and like the timeline almost of what happens during dementia. Even though every person is bound to be different, I kind of just find like a rough kind of series of things that happen, so that I can plan my like what my actor will go through in the film. Just other like activities that people can go to, carers and the person being cared for whilst the person has dementia, to try keep them integrated into society even though that they have dementia. As they did mention some things, but I didn't have the time to write them down. So those are the things I'm going to research into next, and I think that's pretty much it for that. So yes, thank you for watching, and that was my primary research into carers. Thank you, bye.